Welcome to the Couch Scouts podcast. We provide league-winning analysis, advice, and tools to help you dominate your league and build a dynasty. Scout, draft, win. Here's your host, Matt Cooper.
Hello and welcome to the Couch Scouts podcast. I am your host, Matt Cooper. With me is my co-host, Matt Jackson.
What's going on, guys?
This week, we are down Mr. Rupert. He is in Texas on a work trip. So if you live in Texas, look for him. Give him a wave. Miss you, Rupert. We'll see you next week. We are continuing a mock draft that we started last week. Pretty fun exercise. We did rounds 1 and 2 last week. We're picking up rounds 3 and 4. But this is a draft that is only 2024, 2025, and 2026 classes. So these are your young, kind of cornerstone dynasty players. Fun to kind of get in here and see where the 2026 class stacks up with the other two classes. And I will recap very briefly our first two rounds. If you didn't catch last week's episode, you should really just go back and listen to the whole thing. You'll hear all of our picks, why we made them, all that good stuff. But for context for this episode, I feel like I have to at least read the names. So round 1 was Drake May, Jaden Daniels, Brock Bowers, Caleb Williams, Malik Neighbors. That's a lot of the 2024 class to start things off. Then Jeremiah Love, our first 26 guy, Ashton Genty, our first 25 guy, and then Bucky Irving, Jackson Dart, Tetaroa McMillan, Omarion Hampton, Colston Loveland. So that's the first round, first 12 picks. Pretty heavy on the 2024 class. And then in round 2, we had Tyler Warren, Bo Nix, Carnell Tate, Travis Hunter. That was a spicy one. Emeka Egbuka, Lad McConkey, Harold Fannin, Rome Odunze, Travion Henderson, Marvin Harrison Jr., Jordan Tyson, and Quinshawn Judkins. So that second round was a lot heavier on the 2025 class. And at the end of those first two rounds, we only had 3 2026 players taken. We had Jeremiah Love, Carnell Tate, and Jordan Tyson off the board in those first two rounds. So I know that was a super speed run. Again, if you want to go back, listen to the whole podcast, I would encourage it. But yeah, we're ready. We're going to jump into rounds 3 and 4 on the show this week. Rupert did continue to participate in the mock draft. He's not able to be on the show tonight, but we'll call out what his picks were. So you ready to get into it, Jackson?
Yeah, no, I'm ready. This is an exciting little thing that we're doing, and I'm excited to kind of pick back up where we left off last week.
For sure. So Rupert was actually on the clock first at the 3:01, and he took Cam Ward, quarterback for the Tennessee Titans, out of the 2025 draft class. Jackson, is this higher than you would have taken Cam Ward?
This is right around kind of where I would have taken Cam Ward. Roughly. I mean, there's a few guys, and one of those I'm going to get to here in just a second that I have currently in my dynasty rankings above Cam Ward. But it's relatively close. I can't argue, especially in superflex leagues, him taking the quarterback here. Looking at the Titans roster, he didn't exactly light the world on fire. This season, real lack of weapons there for Tennessee. They went out and spent really high draft capital on getting Carnell Tate, that amazing wide receiver out of Ohio State. We loved everything about him. And then they did probably the best favor they could have done Cam Ward in bringing in Brian Daboll to be the offensive coordinator.
Yep.
A guy that is really known for developing quarterbacks and getting the best kind of play out of offenses. I think that's going to really benefit Cam Ward there. And year 2 should be an exciting jump for him. So I respect the pick there.
Yeah, it was a little higher, I think, than I would have gone. He finished his QB 22 last year, and it was a good offseason for him, right? Like you mentioned, Daboll comes in, they bring in Wandell, who's a nice, underneath kind of security blanket for a quarterback, good yak guy, and then, they spend a top 5 pick on Carnell Tate to get him a true alpha wide receiver. So definitely a good offseason for Cam Ward. And you just hope that he has the talent. And there were some good moments on tape. I think he is a talent. He wasn't like a, can't miss prospect at the quarterback position. He was 101, but in a weaker draft class where he wouldn't have been 101 in a lot of other classes. He's got good arm talent, decent mobility. So hopefully he can kind of put it together between the ears, start seeing the field a little bit better in his second season, take advantage of those weapons that they just got for him. But at the point where Rupert picked him here, let me pull up my who was left. So Fernando Mendoza was on the board. Cam Scadaboo was on the board. Brian Thomas Jr., Makai Lemon. Let's see. Above Cam Ward, yeah, I think all of those guys I just mentioned ahead of Cam Ward and maybe even a few more. So he would have been probably more of a later in the third round in this exercise guy for me. But he's got the upside to outperform this 301 spot too. So if you believe in the player, I certainly respect going that high. At the 302, you took one of the guys that I just mentioned. Who'd you take, Jackson?
Yeah, 302. I took a guy. Admittedly, you mentioned Makai Lemon. When I made this pick, I didn't notice that Makai Lemon was still on the board, or he might have been my pick there. But I did end up getting Cam Scadabo, running back for the Giants. All offseason, one of the things that we were all super worried about was the talk that the Giants were going to take Jeremiah Love top 5. I normally when there's smoke, there's a fire somewhere, and I was really worried about Scadabo being supplanted in New York. I mean, he's coming off a really amazing season, but a season where he was injured and he had a severe leg injury. So we don't really know how he was going to bounce back. Were they going to come in and find somebody to take his spot? Running back is so easily supplanted in NFL circles. So I was worried about that. But out of the draft, Scadabo is one of those players that left unscathed, right? Still has a hold on that position. I know Tyrone Tracy's there. We saw what happened when Scadabo was given the carries last year. He was amazing. Talking about a guy that was RB6 from weeks 2 to 7 in 2025. Just really great season. He has been a Couch Scouts favorite since we watched him. And that's not changing anytime soon. As long as he has a hold on the position. You're talking about a powerful runner, guy that has a knack for finding the end zone. He's not a plotter. He's got some wiggle to his game, some elusiveness. Like, he's a guy that we love, and I was excited to get him here.
Yeah, and I do think that he is a very good player. We love the tape. So despite the draft capital, the new coaching staff, everything that you mentioned, when he was healthy, this guy was a bell cow. He was the RB6 weeks 2 through 7 in 2025. He was the only Giants running back to receive more than a single carry inside the red zone in that time frame per Fantasy Pros. So, yeah, I mean, if he comes back and he's healthy, like, Tracy wasn't even really a factor. He had totally beat out Tracy. He was dominating touches. He was seeing 20 plus touches a week, I think, during that time frame. So, yeah, there's a ton of upside there with that pick. At the 303, I took Fernando Mendoza, and from the 2026 class, obviously just went 101 in the real NFL draft to the Raiders. I love the pairing with him and Kubiak. Kubiak is by all accounts seems like a great offensive mind in the NFL. Was clearly mentored by his father, and his father always had pretty quarterback friendly offenses. Yeah, I like this. I think they need to shore up that offensive line because that was a problem last year. Gino, who had previously been at least a respectable quarterback, just looked like awful last year. And a lot of it was because as soon as he would drop back, he's under pressure. And, Genty, who we love and thought was like this really elite running back talent, looked pretty bad at times. And it was because as soon as he'd get the ball, he'd get swallowed up in the backfield. So Bowers missed a good chunk of time last year. I think Bowers being back and healthy will help. The Kubiak thing helps. They still don't have a ton at wide receiver there. So, this might be rough early on for Mendoza. I don't know what it'll look like because he's a quarterback that doesn't really generate a lot on his own. He doesn't do a lot of, escaping and running around. Like, he can do it, but I wouldn't call it a strength. He's much more cerebral. Like, he wants to read the defense before the snap and then drop back, get it out quick, make a quick decision, make the right decision more often than not. So maybe that helps with a bad offensive line. I know Tom Brady over the years had some pretty bad offensive lines, but he just got the ball out so quick that it didn't matter. So maybe Mendoza can be that kind of guy, but I don't know if that is going to happen immediately. So, it's a player you're going to have to be patient with, but I think long term he should be a solid quarterback in the NFL.
Yeah, no, I'm not worried about a long term immediate upside. I think is kind of capped. I mean, he might have the type of year one that maybe like a Cam Ward had last year. You're talking about a low end QB2, but I think he has more longevity than some of the other guys that you're getting in that range, just because of his mental processing, his ability to read the defense. One of the things I wasn't super crazy about him was like his escapability and like sack avoidance type of thing. So I'm worried about that behind that offensive line, which might cap immediate upside, but long term, the upside is there, especially at this range.
Yep. So at 304, Mr. Rupert took Brian Thomas Jr. from the 2024 draft class, obviously a wide receiver for the Jacksonville Jaguars. And this is one of the hardest ones to rank, I feel like, because he has the upside to like way, way, way outperform this. And he also has maybe the lowest floor of anybody that we've talked about. He was unstartable in fantasy for most of last year. He dropped from 75 yards a game down to 50 yards a game from 2024 to 2025. His catch percentage plummeted, went from 65% down to 53%. These are per Pro Football Reference. And his drop rate more than doubled from 5.2% up to 11% in 2025. So, I mean, was this a bad case of the yips? Was this all about learning a new offense that wasn't using him properly? Is that going to get corrected this year? You know, as he struggled, like they brought in Jacoby Myers, they brought in, Parker Washington kind of had his breakout and was vastly outperforming Brian Thomas Jr. down the stretch in the same offense. You got Travis Hunter coming back, who they have insisted that he's going to continue playing both sides of the ball, and they want him on offense as much as they can get him on offense. So this is like a really hard wide receiver room to project. I think everybody is going to pretend like they know how it's going to shake out, and nobody really knows how it's going to shake out till the season starts. So, a year ago, he would have been like a second round startup pick, and now he's a third round mock draft pick with only 3 draft classes included. So his value has dropped a lot. We'll see if he can recover some of it, but the upside is certainly there. And then at 305, who'd you take?
Yeah, at 305, I took a guy that I honestly feel a little more comfortable with. I know the situation may be just as crowded as it was for Brian Thomas, but I took Mekhi Lemon, the new wide receiver for the Philadelphia Eagles. Look, the writing is on the wall. AJ Brown is for all intents and purposes out of here post June 1st. He's already booked time with a realtor as of this week. He's looking at houses in the Boston area. Like we know where he's going. It's just a matter of what the compensation is going to be. His teammate, who we're going to talk about on the bonus show when we talk about buys, is somebody I'm really interested in Devontae Smith. But I think there's room, especially with the skill set of Mekhi Lemon kind of working the middle of the field, to really be a weapon, especially after the catch for that Eagles offense, who right now is lacking a solid wide receiver 2 option. Yes, I know what everybody's saying. Jalen Hurts doesn't throw the ball over the middle, but if you look at the percentages that we ran hooks and curl routes at the NFL last year, like it was astronomically high. Like Jalen Hurts wasn't looking in the middle of the field because he wasn't schemed to look in the middle of the field. Like that's not something I'm super worried about. He's taking a lot more snaps under center. Word is that him and the new offensive coordinator are really hitting it off. And I think the recipe is there for both Devontae Smith and Mekhi Lemon to feast. And I have him at this point ranked much higher than some of the other guys that we had taken here. So was excited to get him there in second look. And yes, I know it's crowded. I know there's a lot of things going on, but I'm really excited for his upside here.
Yeah, not a homer take from you at all, right?
Not at all. Not at all.
Mr. Fly, Eagles fly over here. Yeah, I like Mekhi Lemon, and it's an interesting argument, I think, even between him and some other guys in terms of like, would you rather have, we'll talk about Concepcion later. He goes in these 2 rounds somewhere. I won't spoil it. But would you rather have a guy who has a clear path to be the wide receiver 1 on his team, but it's going to be a bad offense? Or would you rather have potentially the wide receiver 2 in a good offense? Now, obviously, jury's still out on how good the Eagles passing offense will be. There were some signs last year that it was not good, but like you said, new coaching staff, all that kind of stuff. So, yeah, Mekhi Lemon, I think he's a pretty safe pick. We'll see if the upside is limited early in his career. I mean, even let's say that you move Devontae Smith up to that AJ Brown role, and then Mekhi Lemon inherits the Devontae Smith role. Well, Devontae Smith's a very, very good wide receiver, and he still has been a really inconsistent wide receiver too for most of his career. His upside has been capped. So will the same thing be true for Mekhi Lemon? I think it's a fair question. At the 306, I took Luther Burden from the 2025 draft class, plays for the Chicago Bears, 2.34 yards per route run, tied for the 7th best in the NFL in 2025, albeit on a limited sample, but this is among wide receivers with 50 plus targets, 7th best. And historically, that bodes well. Like if you are high efficiency on a moderate amount of touches, you tend to be still pretty high efficiency when you get more touches. And that does seem to be in the cards this year. You know, they've moved on from DJ Moore. Everybody's excited about what Luther Burden could look like with a full-time role in this offense. It is still a lot of mouths to feed. You know, Rome Odunze, when Luther Burden was showing out towards the end of last year, Rome Odunze was not healthy. And of course, Loveland kind of broke out at the same time. So you had Loveland and you had Burden both looking like future stars, but with Rome Odunze not really looking like his usual self. So what happens when you bring Odunze back into that mix? How is that going to shake out? That's going to be really interesting to keep an eye out for. One thing I think is interesting, Rome Odunze went like middle of the 2nd round of this mock draft that we're doing, and Burden doesn't go till the middle of the 3rd round. And I think there's a lot of people in the Dynasty community that actually have Burden higher than Odunze. So we're kind of, I think, below consensus here and where we're taking him. I think this is a good value. And yeah, I mean, Burden, as far as caliber of prospect, he's right up there with the Mekhi Lemons of the world. Like, it's very similar recliner rating between the two guys. And yeah, I like both of these players. I think it makes sense that they're going close to back here.
Yeah, I mean the only thing that really, I'm a Luther Burden fan. You know how many shares I had. I walked out of drafts last year with him. I am a little worried that it took a Roma Dunze injury, DJ Moore injury, Colston Loveland. It took a lot of variables for Luther Burden to be a factor late into the season. I don't know how that transitions, like you said, with Moore's out, Moore's gone now, but now you have Roman Dunze coming back. It makes me nervous, but I still love the player.
Yeah, and I didn't think about this till you just said that, but I remember saying some of the same things about Amon-Ra St. Brown when he broke out the second half of his rookie year. Now, Burden didn't break out to the extent that Amon-Ra did. I'm not saying, I'm not saying it's the same player, but Amon-Ra tore it up the second half of his rookie season after doing nothing early. And at the time that he was tearing it up, TJ Hawkinson was on the Lions, but he was hurt, right? And Jahmyr Gibbs was on the Lions, but he was hurt. If I'm remembering correctly, there were a lot of players that were hurt, and that was kind of the narrative on Amon-Ra, was that they didn't have anybody else to throw to, and so he became a target hog in the second half of the year. And there were a lot of people, including me, that didn't fully buy into it, that wish that they would have. So, sometimes it looks like it might be, he just got on the field because all those guys got hurt. And actually it's like, well, as a rookie, it took a while to earn his way onto the field and earn the coach's trust. And when he did, wheels up. So I will be very curious to see what happens second year for Luther Burden. At the 307, Rupert took Tyler Shuck from last year's draft class, quarterback for the Saints, arguably the best rookie quarterback performer in 2025. Definitely outperformed Cam Ward, who's already been taken here. I'm not sure I would argue that he outperformed Dart, but maybe as a passer, you could argue that he was top half in the NFL in on-target throw percentage, while being top 10 in ADOT and tied for first in the fastest time to throw, 2.2 seconds. So in other words, he was throwing the ball downfield accurately and quickly. He was diagnosing the defense. He was getting the ball out. He was pushing it down the field and playing really well. And it was leading to fantasy points. And yeah, I mean, maybe we just misjudged him. We were not high on him as a prospect, but he played really, really well. He's young. I think by all indications, unless he comes in second year and collapses, it looks like he's the quarterback of the future for the Saints, which has a lot of value.
And they went and got him some help in the offseason, which is huge for him. You bring in, Travis Etienne at running back. You bring in Jordan Tyson on the other side opposite Olave. Like,
yeah, it's looking like it could be a pretty fun offense.
It's turning into a formidable offense now, yeah.
Yeah, which I hate because I'm a Panthers fan. Boo. But it should be a pretty nice offense. So at the 308, you took a guy that I referenced earlier in the podcast.
Yep, I took KC Concepcion, wide receiver for now your Cleveland Browns. Look, it is no secret that this podcast, that the Couch Scouts, love ourselves some KC Concepcion, especially in the range that you can get him in rookie drafts right now. Like, he's pretty consistently now going in the 107 straight up in 2026 rookie drafts, which is such a value. Like, that's not where he should be going. He should be going probably 2 or 3 picks before then. He's stepping into an offense where there is no established wide receiver one. Like, I'm not a Jerry Jeudy fan at all. I think he's immediately the best wide receiver on that offense. You've heard us talk about it before. I'm not going to belittle the point or berate the point any more than I need to. He can step in and immediately earn a 20-25% target share. He is a phenomenal route runner, short to intermediate. He is great after the catch. He's a tough physical over the middle of the field type of guy, and he's going to earn targets at a high rate. And we might be looking at somebody that has a breakout rookie season like immediately. Like, that's how good KC Concepcion is.
For sure. And at the 309, I took Kenyon Sadiq. I was looking here. I was kind of like, is this really who I'm taking? Like, I feel like there's such a drop off. I don't know. Maybe that's just me, but like, even in tight end premium, like Sadiq, I like him. I don't love him. I like the first round draft capital. I hate the landing spot. I like his athleticism. I had questions about his route running and his college production. So, like, I would be much more excited to draft Concepcion in my rookie drafts. And in a startup, I would be like way more excited about taking Tyler Shuck or Luther Burden than I would be about Sadiq. So this feels like it just dropped quickly. But I was looking through my rankings. I was like, well, my next highest startup guy after Sadiq would be Cooper Jr. And, and then there's Gadsden, who we're going to talk about in a minute. And like, he just took a hit. So like, I started looking through the options. I was like, yeah, Sadiq's the best player available. I guess we're doing
honestly the same thing happens in rookie drafts for me too. Like, I've been in 2 rookie drafts now where I've been on the clock at 108, and Concepcion's gone right before me, and I'm like, oh man, like, I guess I'll take Sadiq. Like,
yeah,
so I feel that.
It feels gross. So at the 310, Rupert did take Oronde Gadsden from last year's draft class, was a 5th round pick to the Chargers at tight end, but showed some nice things his rookie year. They brought in Charlie Kohler early in the offseason. Now they bring in David Njoku, which I think is great for the Chargers. Not sure how good that is for Oronde Gadsden. I do still think Gadsden is probably the tight end one there over Njoku. But Njoku didn't get brought in to block. He got brought in to catch passes. So there's no way that doesn't impact Gadsden's fantasy upside some, at least in the short term. And even like last year, like, I don't know, man, like so much of his production came in like a 3-week stretch where he just went bonkers, and then he came back down to earth and was pretty bad down the stretch last season. I have some real concerns and reservations about Oronde Gadsden. He could be a total trap in Dynasty right now.
Yeah, no, I feel that. It's one of those sticky situations where they both do the same thing in the tight end position. So how is that going to work? Totally understand.
And it's like he's a 5th-round pick. Like there's no
Yeah.
investment in him from the team. And then when you look back at what he did last year and you start looking through the box scores and stuff, you're like, man, most of his production came in like those 2 or 3 games. Like outside of that, he really was not like a great fantasy tight end. So yeah, he's a hard one to gauge. Makes me really nervous in Dynasty. So like I said, steep drop off here in the talent level. Here at the 311, who'd you take?
Yeah. So you mentioned this earlier. And this is going to be a theme for like from here on out, pretty much until the end of the draft. It's going to be these 2026 guys are making a
Mhm.
comeback. And I don't know if you were dealing with this, but one of the things that I kind of found myself having the conversation was, do I take guys that didn't really have a great rookie season or haven't proved it in a year? Or do I take guys who I think talent wise are equal or better and at least have the opportunity right now? And that's where a lot of these 2026 guys have started coming into play. Took Omar Cooper Jr. from the Jets. Again, nasty quarterback situation. Don't really know what that offense is going to look like. I know Garrett Wilson's the established wide receiver one, but we do like what Omar Cooper Jr. does. Arguably the best wide receiver for the championship team that was Indiana last year. We really liked his film. He was right up there in the 77, 78 range for us. First round pick, has the draft capital, has the perceived opportunity at wide receiver 2. A lot to like. And yeah, I just found myself having a lot of conversations of, I guess I'll just take the guy that has the perceived upside that we haven't seen it yet. And that was a theme for me for like the rest of the draft.
Yeah, you got to hope that at some point the Jets get a quarterback that can support all these weapons that they've now brought in with Garrett Wilson, Omar Cooper Jr., Kenyon Sadiq, Brees Hall. There's a lot of talent on that offense, and it still might be a terrible offense because they've got Geno Smith as the quarterback. We'll see. Like Geno Smith is not that far removed from being like a really respectable quarterback in Seattle. So maybe this season in Las Vegas with no offensive line just ends up looking like a blip, and Geno's back to being like a solid QB2 that can support some fantasy options. That would be a nice surprise. But yeah, long term, I like the play on the talent there with Omar Cooper Jr. Can run routes, win at all 3 levels of the field. Just absolute monster with the ball in his hands. So good after the catch. And then at the 312, I had a hard decision because I was looking at my rankings and I was like, I have Denzel Boston next. But then my heart was like, Antonio Williams.
I did the same thing. I made a live change in my rankings as soon as I looked at that option.
I was like, man, I think I like Antonio Williams better. Like recliner rating, they're almost identical. The landing spot is like way better for Antonio Williams, in my opinion. Like Denzel Boston is fighting to be the second, but probably realistically the third target option because I think Fannin and Concepcion will both out target him. So he's fighting with Judy for who's going to be the third target option, probably, in my opinion, just based on the eval of all the players there in Cleveland. And you know, these bigger bodied guys, oftentimes they just end up like being that sacrificial X that's just running up and down the sideline and not getting a lot of targets. So I was like, Antonio Williams, I just like the path better for him to be fantasy relevant, for him to be a target hog, to go be the wide receiver 2 opposite Terry McLaurin in a good offense with a good quarterback and run routes and get open and earn a bunch of targets. So I was like, yeah, Antonio Williams. The more I thought about it, I was like, I would rather have him than Denzel Boston. So I made the switch while we were doing this exercise. So here at the end of round 3, we have seen 11 2024 guys off the board in all 3 rounds. We've seen 15 2025 guys, so they've pulled into the lead here. And then now we're up to 9 2026. So 2026 making a little comeback in that round. And I'll say this too. We're going to take a break in a second before we get into round 4, and we'll definitely go quicker on round 4. Not as much to talk about there, but um, I'm interested to see this trend of all these 2026 guys going late, because it's like you just know most of these guys aren't going to hit. They're
Yeah.
just not like,
Yeah.
but it's just the 2024 and the 2025 have kind of already proven that they're not it. Like, we've got a 2-year sample size of the 2024 guys not producing. We've got a 1-year sample size of some of the 2025 guys doing nothing. And we're like, yeah, okay, I'll take the chance on the 2026. But the reality is, like, a lot of these 2026 guys are going to bust too. We just haven't seen them bust yet, so we're still living on the hopium. So it's like this gets a little tricky. I would be really interested to go back and look at this exercise next year and see how many of these guys that we take in rounds 3 and 4 that by a year from now we're just like totally uninterested in. Because right, like if we had done this a year ago, I bet we would have seen guys like Xavier Worthy and Ricky
Yeah.
Pearsall and you know Matthew Golden probably would have gone off the board, and some
If
of
we'd
that.
done this
And
a year ago, we loved Dylan Sampson. When he was coming into the league, and not to
yeah,
spoil it, but Dylan Sampson's a guy that doesn't go, right? So
yeah. So very, very interesting to see how quick we are to like boost people up the rankings off of opium when a lot of these guys are going to go that same route. But all right, let's take a quick break before we get into round 4. Got a shout out for you guys, the great resources we have at CouchScouts.com. It's not too late. I don't know how many of you guys have already finished all of your rookie drafts versus how many of you guys still have rookie drafts to go. But if you're in that second category, you got to check out CouchScouts.com. Our rookie guide is the ultimate resource for dominating your rookie draft. We've got in-depth scouting reports. We've got rankings. We've got numerical film grades on all of these guys across a number of different attributes. And yeah, I just think it's going to give you the clearest roadmap to make informed decisions when you're on the clock. And we've also got bonus podcasts every week. We've got our startup rankings. If you're doing a startup draft right now, and the rookies are included in that. So, like, where do I take the 2026 guys when I'm doing a startup draft? We've got that included too. So, definitely check out Couch Scouts. You can get a subscription. It's an annual price, but if you divide it out, it comes out to $5 a month. And I think it's well worth the price. So, check that out, couchscouts.com. And with all that being said, let's jump back into round 4. Rupert kicks us off at the 401. He takes Bashal Tutin, running back for the Jacksonville Jaguars, out of the 2025 draft class. This is a popular breakout candidate. He had 11 games last season with 4 or more carries. In only 4 of those games was he above 4 yards per carry. Slightly cherry-picked stat there. If you use 5+ attempts, he hits 4 yards per carry 50% of the time. But anyway, this is just a stats rabbit trail from our stats guy. Thank you, Garrett. Point is, he didn't get a lot of touches last year, and he didn't do a lot with the touches that he did get behind Travis Etienne. But if you ask this film evaluator, whenever I watched him carry the ball last year, I thought he looked really good doing it, and I thought with more volume, he could have been a really nice fantasy player, and he just kind of had Etienne standing in the way. I liked him as a prospect quite a bit. He goes 3rd round, which is decent draft capital for a running back. In fact, I had him graded higher than most of the guys here in this 2026 class. Like, I had him graded higher than a guy like a Jonah Coleman, who we'll talk about in a little bit. I had him graded higher than RJ Harvey, who went a round earlier than him, but everybody went crazy because he went to the Broncos. I think Tutin's a better player. I'm just going to say it. And, when he did get touches last year, which wasn't often, but he had one game where I think Etienne was banged up. He had 15 carries. But in that game, he had 74 yards, almost 5 yards a carry. He got in the end zone with a touchdown. So that's an encouraging sign. I know it's one game. It's a tiny little sample, but yeah, I like the narrative that like he's better than Chris Rodriguez Jr. and he's the guy that Cohen drafted, and they let Etienne walk because they were comfortable with Tutin. That's the narrative that I'm choosing to believe, and I think he is a good breakout candidate. What do you think,
Yeah,
Jackson?
no, I like it. I'm a little more sourpuss, I guess, when it comes to that pick. Like, do I think that Tootin is a better running back than Chris Rodriguez? Like, yeah, absolutely, I do. I would be lying if I said though that I don't think that Chris Rodriguez's presence there is not going to matter a little bit. Like you're
Yeah.
talking about a guy that had over 100 carries last year in the NFL. I think he's going to play at least some part. And where that scares me is that going to take away the bell cow ability for Tootin, and he's going to drop back into that role of getting 8, 9, 10 carries a game and not really being a fantasy relevant guy. That worries me a little bit. I love the talent, but it's a cause for concern for me.
Yeah, the other thing was that Tootin was not used as a pass catcher really at all last year, which I thought as a prospect that he had that in his game, but he most of his games, even that 15 carry game that I mentioned, he had 0 targets. So that is a concern. If Chris Rodriguez is coming in and stealing goal line work, and Tootin's not catching passes, like where does that leave him? So I think it's a valid concern. I'm not like over the moon about Tootin, but I am really intrigued and I like the possibilities of what could be this year with more touches. So at the 4-2, you took a guy that we already talked about and Denzel Boston, right?
Yep. I took Denzel Boston at 4-2. Again, that was the guy that I made the live change, moved Antonio Williams. When I saw them neck and neck, moved him over Denzel Boston. I still love the player. He's a contested catch guy, but he can also run a little bit of routes. Like he's a physical wide receiver. I think that Concepcion is the better wide receiver in that roster. But I do think that Denzel Boston immediately slots in as the X receiver in that offense, and he's going to have a role to play. So again, love the player, just not as high on him as I was some of the other guys.
Yeah, I agree with you. As much as I said, like I like Williams more, it's not meant to say that Boston's bad. It's just he does slide probably right into that X, but he's still probably the third target getter behind Concepcion and Fannin. So where does that leave him from a fantasy perspective? At the 403, I took RJ Harvey from the 2025 class, running back for the Broncos. I mentioned him a minute ago. Is he about to be replaced by his newly drafted teammate? More on that below when we talk about his newly drafted teammate, Jonah Coleman. He underperformed J.K. Dobbins, 3.7 yards per carry versus Dobbins had 5 yards per carry in the same offense. Only averaged 1.9 yards per carry in the red zone. Yuck. 51st among 65 NFL running backs in PFF rush grade among qualified running backs. So, bottom line, RJ Harvey was not good running the ball last year. Limited touches for a reason. Like they trusted Dobbins more. Harvey had some okay games after Dobbins got hurt, but didn't really like take over and light things on fire like everybody thought that he might. Showed some upside in the receiving game, which is intriguing. I think, probably long term, what we're going to see is Jonah Coleman kind of slides into that Dobbins role and takes the bulk of the carries. And Harvey is kind of that change of pace, third down, pass catching back, and they can both have fantasy upside. Harvey also had a lot of good touchdown luck last year that kind of bolstered some of his fantasy numbers. I'm lukewarm on Harvey, but it's getting gross here, so I thought he was the best player available.
Yeah, no, I agree. I was having that same conversation for my pick, and then um, bringing it back to right after that. We see here that Rupert took a quarterback who, when you talk about it getting a little ugly, took Ty Simpson,
Yeah, Ty
first round,
Simpson.
first round quarterback. And again, yes, first round quarterbacks. I mean, I get the pick here, right? First round quarterbacks are going to have some value, and he goes to a system where. He's under that Sean McVay offense. He doesn't have to start right away. It's a great landing spot for him because he can develop, because he can learn. And if he can take the reins from there, I mean, you're looking at him around guys in this class like see if I can find it. You're looking at him around guys like Shador Sanders, Carson Beck, Drew Allar. Those are the quarterbacks left. Like, as much as I didn't really like Ty Simpson's tape, I like them a lot better than all those other guys. So I respect the pick there.
Yeah, it's a speculative, like get him in a Sean McVay, let him learn from Stafford, let him sit for a year. Can he be a much better player than we thought based on his college tape? The team's probably going to give him a chance to start at some point. There's some value insulation. At the 405, You took a pick that's definitely feels more fun than taking Ty Simpson.
It does, and I guess that's where my thinking was a little bit with it. But I took Chris Bell, wide receiver for now your Miami Dolphins. And look, Chris Bell, this was another guy, and I know we're going to be 2026 heavy here at the end, but was another guy that we really loved the film on, and I think the argument could be made, injury aside, if he wasn't injured, you're talking about a guy that could have potentially been a first round wide receiver in this year's draft. A lot of analysts were kind of on that. The injury kind of knocks him down a little bit, but he goes to almost the perfect landing spot, kind of is the best wide receiver on that roster. Immediately steps in and is another one of those guys that you're talking about a 20-25% target share if he rehabs right. Like, the value is there for him to have a really stellar season, and he's a skilled guy. So I'm excited to watch him play this season.
Yeah, he needs to develop his route running. He's a little bit stiff-hipped. You got the injury concern, but yeah, I mean, I think he's clearly the most talented wide receiver on that roster right now, which feels crazy to say. And so there's some good upside with that pick. We're going to go a little rapid fire here. We have officially entered, so you're telling me there's a chance territory, to quote Dumb and Dumber. And most of these, we're not that excited about for one reason or another, but I'd rather take, so you're telling me there's a chance, than a guy in a 2025 or 2024 player who has kind of already shown that he's not it. So I took Eli Stowers I took Eli Stowers at the 4-6. Lukewarm on him. I like the talent. He's got to wait his turn behind Goddard. Could be a pick that pays off for you 2 or 3 years down the road. If he can put on some weight, add some strength, improve his blocking while he's waiting his turn behind Goddard, I think that especially, improve his ability to win some of those contested catches, which you have to do as a tight end. So he's got some development to do, but he is pretty new to the position. He's young. He's got some time to do it. So Eli Stowers at 4-7. Rupert took Jeremy Bernard, 2026. We all liked the tape. Production profile, pretty meh. Draft capital, pretty meh. Landing spot, super meh. He's hopefully got Rodgers coming back to throw the football, but he's waiting his turn behind Metcalf and Pittman. Again, maybe he surprises us and he's just immediately better than both of those guys and takes things by storm. I don't really expect that. I think he is who he is, but we'll see. At the 408, you took Jonah Coleman, 2 years younger than RJ Harvey, 2026 draft class, 4th round, so also 2 rounds later than RJ Harvey.
Much better in between the tackles, runner, power back, slots in, I think, immediately into that J.K. Dobbins role, as you said. Could earn significant carries really early in his career. You're talking about a thunder and lightning combo between him and his third down teammate there in whatever his name is. I've done forgotten now.
RJ Harvey.
RJ Harvey, thank you.
And it's if you're looking at the Sean Payton offense, you could say that it's like, Jonah Coleman is the Mark Ingram and RJ Harvey's the Kamara, but that is paying a really high compliment to 2 guys who are just not as talented as Mark Ingram and Alvin Kamara. They just fall in a lesser range of the same archetype, I think. But yeah, Jonah Coleman, he needs to get touchdowns because he's probably not going to catch a lot of passes, but can he get on the field and get a lot of those first 2 down kind of work and get enough carries and get some volume? I think there's a world where that happens, particularly if Harvey continues to lose the trust of the coaching staff and, just not be trusted with the ball in his hands. People are probably wondering, why have we not taken Jadarian Price yet? I'm finally going to do it. You guys made me do it. I'm mad at you. I didn't want to do it. This is not a player that I believe in. Just point blank. I don't, from my film evaluation, I don't believe in him very much as a player, but he does go first round in the NFL draft. They are probably going to give him a chance. I think people are going to be disappointed because early on it's going to be some weird committee with him and Emmanuel Wilson, and then Charbonnet is going to come back, and then I think Charbonnet is a better player than Jadarian Price, and I just don't know if this ever pans out the way that people want it to pan out, but at the very least, Jadarian Price probably has more trade value than any of the people that we've taken in this round. And if Price like has a big training camp and there's a bunch of buzz coming out, like his price could skyrocket and you could flip him, which I would recommend that you do because I don't believe in him. But yeah, I took Jadarian Price. And then at the 410, Rupert took a guy that he does believe in. That's Emmett Johnson. 5th round draft capital stinks, but it's with the Chiefs and he has a chance. Compliment Kenneth Walker, catch passes, which Kenneth Walker can't do. And Emmett Johnson definitely can. So, we'll see what kind of role that he can carve out there. Might have some good upside if Kenneth Walker gets hurt, which he often does. So
Better than the bones of Kareem Hunt. I know that discussion was on our Discord this week.
yeah. And then at the 411, you took Elijah Surratt.
Yeah, he's a guy that. So you're telling me he's a chance? We believe in Elijah Surratt. I think he's a better player than a guy they took earlier in the draft. And he steps into that big slot role. I think there's a chance where on a team that's lacking a real solid wide receiver too, I think Surratt could be that guy for the Ravens.
Yep, living on that hopium. We like Elijah Surratt. Again, like he could be one of any of these guys that we've talked about, could be one of these guys that a year from now you're like, he's dead fantasy asset. But maybe not. And at the 412, I took a guy who's almost dead. He's kind of close to dead. Xavier Worthy. We finally broke the trend. It was like all 2026 players outside of Bashal Tootin. Round 4 was dominated by the 2026 draft class. I finally went back to the well on 2024 for a guy that I guess I just can't quit. It was a down year in raw production, suffered a shoulder injury the first game of the season, inflicted by his own teammate. From weeks 4 to 15, returned from the injury, Patrick Mahomes at quarterback. He was up to nearly 45 receiving yards per game. That's not very good. And his yards per reception and targets both improved over his rookie season. So is there some hope that he comes back fully healthy and, Rashee Rice, the team's just kind of done with him or whatever? Like, can he get back to some of what he had some magic at the end of his rookie season? He was putting up like 20 fantasy points a game for a stretch at the end of his rookie season. But last year he was just like pretty unusable. So the first round draft pick, a lot of talent, very fast. We'll see if he can bounce back this season. So on that mostly pessimistic note, we end round 4. The final count here is 12 from the 2024 class, 17 from the 2025 class, and 18 from the 2026 class. So we actually ended up the most picks in this 4-round exercise came from
That's
this
ho-
down.
that's hopium right there.
That's all hopium, because if you look at the first 2 rounds, there was only 3 2026 guys. And the first 2 rounds were dominated by 2024 and then 2025 with these guys that have proven it and look like studs. And I hope that there's going to be a few of those that come out of the 2026 class. But really when we started taking 2026 was when we exhausted all the studs from the 2024 and 2025, and we got to like people we just had seen no production from. So some of those players that we have seen little to no production from, I'll give you some honorable mentions that didn't get taken. Ricky Pearsall has had some moments, some flashes, but now you've got Mike Evans there. They brought in Christian Kirk. They drafted Dejon Stribling way too high. Where does that leave Pearsall? Tyrone Tracy, aka Cam Scadaboo's backup. Jaden Higgins, aka Nico Collins' backup, because we'll talk about another guy in a second, and that's Jalen Noel, I suppose is how you pronounce it properly, who I think is going to be the wide receiver 2 in Houston. We'll talk about that maybe a little bit more on the bonus show. I think he's better than Jaden Higgins, and he complements Nico Collins better. Christian Kirk is out of town, opens things up for him. Matthew Golden did nothing as a rookie. I kind of think he'll continue to do nothing. Jack Besh did nothing as a rookie. I hope that he can turn it around, but I'm not super optimistic. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt had like 2 good games as a rookie, but I mean, I guess like they brought in Katron Allen. I think JCM's probably better than Katron Allen. which isn't saying much. Chris Rodriguez is gone, but I don't think he's better than Rachaad White. So I think somehow Rachaad White has found himself back into a volume role. That's an ugly running back room. Zachariah Branch, Chris Brazel, 2 guys from this class that you could have thrown in the hopium category there in round 4. But yeah, that's the show. Hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully it helped you as you think through some of these on the clock decisions and where you rank and how you value these guys in trades. If you haven't already, join our free community Discord. Link is in the show notes. No strings attached. We just love getting to know the people that listen to the show. And definitely make sure you check out CouchScouts.com and leave us a rating and review on whatever podcast platform you're listening on. Have a blessed week.